The WNBA Finals were supposed to be a coronation, the pinnacle of women's basketball, where passion, legacy, and competition came together under one spotlight. But when Aja Wilson and DeWanna stepped into those arenas and looked up into rows of empty red seats, the silence told its own story. This wasn't the celebration anyone imagined. It was a reckoning. The cameras panned across the floor trying to capture excitement, but all they found was absence. Whole sections of the crowd were missing. What was supposed to be the league's most electric moment, its Super Bowl, its grand finale, instead felt eerily lifeless. Fans weren't there. Ticket prices had dropped to $35 for championship seats, and even at that price, people weren't buying. The buzz that had surrounded the league just months ago had vanished, and everyone knew exactly when it disappeared. When Caitlin Clark's season ended, Aja Wilson could feel it immediately. The reigning MVP expected noise, that electric hum of anticipation. But instead, she heard her own sneakers squeak on the hardwood. "This is the finals?" she muttered, shaking her head. It wasn't arrogance. It was disbelief. DeWanna's face told the same story, disappointment wrapped in anger. In the post-game press conference, she didn't hide it. "You work your whole career for moments like this," she said, her voice sharp. "You just hope people care enough to show up?" Fans had checked out. Online polls showed that less than 5% of followers planned to watch the finals between the Aces and the Mercury. Social media lit up with disbelief. Where is everyone? Is this the finals or a scrimmage? If Caitlin Clark were here, you wouldn't find a seat under $300. The sentiment was brutal, but honest. The league's most talked about star wasn't in the building, and without her, the spotlight dimmed instantly. Inside the league office, executives tried to spin the story. They called it a competitive matchup between two elite teams, but no one was buying it. The optics spoke louder than the press releases. Fans wanted emotion, narrative, and connection, and this finals had none of it. It was a silent film in a season full of sound. As the games rolled on, frustration began to boil over. During a timeout in Game 2, cameras caught Aja slamming her towel on the bench, shouting in frustration as she glared toward the stands. Bonner followed, shaking her head after a missed layup, mouthing words that fans later lip-read as, "Nobody cares." Within hours, the clips went viral. Fans mocked them mercilessly. "You wanted Caitlin gone. Now look around." The comments were harsh but revealed a painful truth. The veterans who had once dismissed Clark's popularity were now begging for the same attention. The backlash was swift. Even the WNBA's most loyal followers, the ones who had defended the league for years, began to turn. They weren't attacking women's basketball. They were calling out the attitude. Many fans felt alienated by players who seemed to resent the surge of new viewers Caitlin Clark had brought in. That resentment, once brushed off as competitiveness, now looked like self-sabotage. By Game 3, the tension was unbearable. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert walked into her pre-game press conference, determined to redirect the conversation. She tried to open with optimism. "We're witnessing incredible growth," she said. But the smiles in the room were tight, forced. Reporters didn't waste time. "Commissioner," one asked, "how do you explain record low attendance and ratings for the finals?" Engelbert froze for a split second, then launched into excuses. Scheduling issues, market fatigue, misleading narratives. It sounded hollow. Then came the real question. Isn't this about how the league handled Caitlin Clark's rise and the backlash that followed? The room fell silent. Engelbert's tone turned defensive. "This isn't about one player," she snapped. But the more she denied it, the more the internet erupted. Within hours, hashtags like "Trar without Caitlin" and "Trar Engelbert out" were trending. Her comment, meant to defend the league, had just poured gasoline on the fire. Fans saw it as proof that the league was in denial. Behind closed doors, players were angry too. Aja reportedly vented in the locker room after Game 3. "We show up, we play hard, and somehow it's always our fault." Bonner stayed quiet, but her silence spoke volumes. Both knew the finals had become a symbol of something much bigger, the disconnect between the WNBA's leadership, its players, and its fans. Executives scrambled for solutions. PR teams were told to post more empowering highlights. Social media pages flooded with motivational captions and glossy videos, but fans weren't fooled. They flooded the comments with side-by-side photos of fever games versus finals crowds, packed arenas versus empty seats. "You chased away your audience," one post read. "Now you're playing for yourselves." Meanwhile, younger players across the league whispered privately about the growing tension. "We just want the league to grow," one said anonymously. But the veterans act like fans are a threat instead of a blessing. It was a quiet but devastating sentiment, the kind of fracture that no marketing campaign could fix. As the series dragged on, the numbers kept crashing. Ratings dropped nearly 50% from the semifinals. Attendance was the lowest in a decade. Even sports networks that had championed the league couldn't spin the story. "Fans have spoken," one analyst said. "They're watching for stories, not slogans, and right now the WNBA isn't telling one worth following." Inside the locker rooms, players tried to stay focused, but the weight was crushing. Wilson reportedly broke down after seeing the viewership data. "It hurts," she told a teammate. "We did everything right on the court, but it feels like nobody cares." Bonner echoed the same thought to staff after the game. "You can't ignore the fans. They decide who matters." Kathy Engelbert faced another barrage of questions in her next briefing, her tone defensive and strained. "We're growing in all the right ways," she insisted, but the numbers scrolling across screens said otherwise. Every chart told the same story. Without Caitlin Clark, the league wasn't struggling. It was invisible. When the final buzzer sounded, confetti fell onto a half-empty arena. Players hugged, cameras zoomed in, and broadcasters tried to sell the moment as triumph. But the emotion wasn't there. The silence between cheers was deafening. The WNBA's grand finale had turned into an autopsy. Journalists wasted no time calling it what it was. "Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's pulse flatlined," one headline read. Talk shows debated whether Engelbert's leadership could survive the fallout. Sponsors began quietly asking questions about next season's marketing plan. The league's promise of unity had splintered into factions: veterans versus newcomers, management versus fans. For Aja and Bonner, it was a sobering realization. The tantrums, the frustration, the dismissive remarks, they had come full circle. The fans they once dismissed were the ones who could have saved them. Aja tried to mend fences in later interviews, admitting, "We all need to grow together." But for many fans, it was too late. The finals had already become the face of the league's biggest failure. By week's end, petitions were circulating demanding new leadership. Hashtags calling for Engelbert's resignation flooded social media. Commentators described the finals as a wake-up call, or maybe a warning shot. The WNBA's dream season had ended not with applause, but with a mirror, one that reflected every flaw the league refused to confront. Because the truth is simple. The WNBA doesn't have a marketing problem. It has a humility problem. The fans didn't abandon women's basketball. They abandoned the arrogance that came with it. The league had been given a gift in Caitlin Clark, a once-in-a-generation talent who reignited the nation's love for the sport. But instead of embracing her, it tried to compete with her, and in doing so, it alienated the very people who filled those arenas. As the last confetti was swept off the court, one haunting question lingered. Was this the wake-up call that would save the WNBA, or the warning that would define its downfall?